All right.
Do it.
There you go. And we're live. How's it going, CodeStrap?
It's going good, man. A little slow
Oh,
this
man.
morning.
I got to tell
Drowning my
you.
sorrows last night.
Folks are folks are happy that you're here, man. They've been reaching out to me, asking me to get you on the channel, and for good reason. You've been posting lately on your channel, and you've been posting some really, really good content, man.
Thanks, dude.
I hope the folks that are on the live stream right now, which are, lately, I changed my channel name. And,
yep. I want Palantrillion, man. Where's Palantrillion? That was like the best name ever, dude. I was like, oh my god, that's a killer name.
Yeah, but folks right now are discouraged with the Palantir. I'm like, look, man, it's an idea. It's the idea that they're going to be. It's not the trillion. It's the idea that they're going to be a huge company. That's what it is. It's not the money itself.
I'm banking on them being $1 trillion company one day, but
yeah, I changed my channel name, and a lot of subscribers are. I still have them, but I don't have the same like community coming back. When we would do these live streams, we'll have like a few hundred people on the live stream.
Yep.
And right now we have 4. So
they can all join us. Come on.
Yeah, I'm sure as people wake up, they'll join, and we'll go ahead and post this anyway, so it can get around. So I'm just excited for the conversation. We got a really good conversation lined up for you guys today. For those of you that don't know, this gentleman here is CodeStrap. He has his own channel. It's called CodeStrap on YouTube. And he's been posting some really good stuff regarding Palantir lately. But he also has some other thoughts and knowledges. He's how would you describe yourself? Software engineer? Well, what's the term you use?
Yeah, I mean, I think everyone in technology ultimately just describes himself as a software engineer. These days, I'm more in the leadership roles,
Right.
But yeah, I run teams and I help companies scale. Like my whole thing that I bring, the value I bring to the organization is figuring out how do I take this startup that's got great ideas and lots of tech debt and scale it so they can get to dozens or hundreds or thousands of engineers, because that's actually a really hard process. Like, something we can talk about later, but like we'll talk a little bit about it, I think. But that process of scaling a company is where all of the hard work goes in. It's like, think YouTube before Google bought it. Like YouTube before Google bought it was kind of a pile of dog duty.
Is this one of the reasons why you, when you first came across Palantir, you had a problem with their like scalability?
Yeah, totally.
Did you have an eye for this kind of stuff?
Yeah. Even things Carp would say that they would make me kind of go, "What are you talking about, dude? Like, this is clearly your first tech startup." And so scalability matters.
He's been at it 17 years though.
Yeah, he's been at it 17 years. He's infinitely more successful than I am. So can't knock him too much. But I've been highly critical because I know how important it is for the success of the business to be able to scale a company, both internally, like in your technology that you use and the way the sausage is made, basically, but also like how you present the product and how you sell it. You can tell whether or not there's some scaling baked in. And I've been saying what they need to do to sort of move on that for a while, which is building that ability to onboard online, go on and sign up, move to like a pool model rather than a silo model. Like a pool model is where you kind of have a share everything environment. All the client data is shared, all the compute is shared. And it's much easier to scale that system because you don't have like dozens of copies of this code floating around and all this provisioned infrastructure to manage. You have like, basically a handful of provisioned regions where your software is running, and it's just much easier to maintain it and scale it and provide that online onboarding experience. And you can make it cheaper too at the end of the day. Right. But that said, a lot of really successful companies don't use pool models. So, it's like, I think they've made a lot of progress in the scalability for sure. But the target customer count for me is like, I want to see them get upwards of 100,000 customers on this platform.
Yeah.
They're nowhere near that trajectory right now, but that's fine because no one is. Like, it's usually something where you have this like really long tail, and then they finally hit the inflection point. I've been pretty consistent in saying that, and that's out past 2025. But I think they're making the right moves. Yeah.
Right. All right. Let's get into some of these questions. Quick disclosure. Not disclosure, but few things here. One, this is not financial advice. We will get into some of the stock price and things that's been going on regarding the market at Palantir. So none of this is financial advice. I am personally a stockholder when it comes to Palantir. I hold Palantir stock in my portfolio. So does CodeStrap, but none of what we're talking about is financial advice here.
You don't want to take financial advice from me, man. If you see on my portfolio right now, like, what the hell's wrong with you, dude?
And everyone's portfolio is red. I don't think any stock right now is safe out there.
Everything's
it's bloody out there, man. It's crazy.
Oh,
this is the moments that make you or break you, man. And I think either you break or you become more elastic and stronger. And I hope that the majority of us become more elastic and stronger here.
Yep.
Just another quick thing is I am getting over a cold, so I have a bit of a cough. You're going to see me eating cough drops. No disrespect here, but I'm just trying to get through this interview without coughing up a storm. So just an FYI. All right, so let's get into some of these questions. Sir, you have used Foundry for Builders. Your team has, your organization has, and I have a few questions for you regarding that, but I know that you are under NDA, so I looked at some of your videos and I saw what you've been able to talk about. If there's any question that you can't really talk about or go into detail, feel free to pass on. We'll go over to the next question. But for now, I know that you've used Foundry for Builders, and this is something that a lot of folks are just kind of wanting to hear about, like, hey man, somebody that's used it hands-on, what are their thoughts on it? So one question I have for you, first and foremost, just to start off, is like, how was it working with the Palantir team? I'm guessing you worked with the Palantir team, and how was that experience for you?
I thought they were amazing, great team. They did a really good job in the demos. I think that they have a really good angle of how they're kind of approaching startups, and they have a good value proposition. I think that it's hard to digest all of the benefits. Like, as they walk you through the platform and stuff, what isn't always obvious is like what the benefit of each of these things are. And I think that an immature organization like a startup will often criticize itself as being too immature to know how to take advantage of some of these things. So if I were to offer advice, I would say, like, try to get into the minds of a startup and the challenges they face, and really articulately kind of explain like how you're going to fail with these other solutions, like what's going to happen to you a year from now after you've implemented, say, Snowflake. And I've said this on your channel before, this would really help crystallize it for the decision makers. Like, you're going to fail with this tool, and here's how you're going to fail. Here's how you're going to fail to deliver value. And oh, by the way, 87% of all of the AI and ML initiatives out there fail. So like, your failure in this space is almost guaranteed. I positioned it that way too to some people, like basically, like I tell a lot of the leadership, like, ML and AI is a big shiny object, can get you really distracted if you're not careful and you don't have the right expertise to make it work. And I think if you really listen to Karp's interview the other day, when he talks about, having credibility in this space is really important. I've been saying that to a lot of people for a long time, because I see how many people fail, with all these tools. So if I were to say, like, the sales team, if they could come up with a pitch that just explains clearly, like, why are all these other people failing and why you're going to fail if you decide to go with the bag of hammers, and what value Foundry is bringing to their existing startups, the problems it's solving. So it's kind of like the problem statement is 87% of all AI and ML initiatives fail. Here's why, and here's how Foundry solves that problem. I think that would be a better way of going about it, because a lot of the startups are just really immature in that space and decision-making process, and rightly so. They're startups, right? Like, they're not Google. So anyway.
All right. So another question for you is anything that you can tell us about the product. Like, how does it compare to other products that you've used in the past or that you're currently using right now? Anything that you can tell us, and I know that you're not too free to speak on that, so whatever you can.
Yeah, they gave me a hell of an NDA. Let me see here. What can I say that I can't? I can reiterate basically anything they're saying publicly about the platform. They've shared general features like their ontology feature. They've shared that publicly. They've shown images of that and sort of how it works. I do believe that that's one of the features that, like, really struck me as being super powerful. graphs are like eating software right now. I don't know if a lot of people know this, but like graphs and graph theory are making a huge comeback in the industry, and it's empowering a lot of the like recommendation engines you get online. So like when you get recommended products and additional services, and it's even used in advertising. Graph theory is used heavily because you can really efficiently, once you establish the relationships between the nodes, you can really efficiently navigate those and do some really cool models based on that. And so like, I know that we've been evaluating internally like different graph databases to sort of power that ontology system. And I felt like theirs was better than anything I had looked at. It really did allow you to do some serious science and build like, an information architecture from the ground up that really represented not only your organization, but like every other organization that you're going to work with. That's sort of ahead of its time, like in a lot of ways, in my opinion, because companies today are just now figuring out like how to get their data into a graph database and like how collecting all of this, unstructured data and semi-structured data and then figuring out how they're going to model it. They're like really in the early stages. Like if you even asked a bunch of companies, like, do you have a graph database in your stack? Like the vast majority are probably going to say no, So that's how early kind of like adoption on this is. Mm-hmm. But I think they're just so far out ahead of how to use that technology. This is a good example of like how they're figuring out ways to use technology that enable a business outcome. And their ontology feature, I think, enables this business outcome to better understand the relationships between all of the pieces of all the entities you work with and all the things you touch. And there's a lot of discovery that goes in there. Like when you talk about like, how can I improve a supply chain, right?
Right.
Well, what's a supply chain? It's a giant fucking graph. It's this web of companies, right?
Right.
And if you really want to understand a supply chain, one of the best ways to model it is through this ontology system, right? So like that's an area where they have a lot of success, and they can show like we enable business outcomes with our technology because we have these features that no one else has. And also because we have people that have been doing it for a while. So like when I talk about that sort of immaturity of a startup, and I include myself in that, I'm not saying that I'm this brilliant person who has all this experience. I'm part of that wild west frontier where we're figuring out how to do this stuff.
But you are,
but they're not. Their people there have been doing this for 15 years. So like, I think that credibility that Karp touched on in the interview is also a really important part of that technology discussion and why they're going to fail. Like, basically just laying out like, you are going to fail. You can come back to us a year from now and we'll tell you we were right, but we won't do that. We'll bring you back in the fold. But they really need to establish their credibility with their track record of success and pointing to the track record of failure among the rest of the industry. I mean, if I told you like the initiatives that Snowflake enable has an 87% failure rate, you could ask like, why are you buying that product? Like to engage in 87% failure rate initiatives in your company. Like, so I think they could really position something like the ontology feature in that way where they can say like, I mean, I can't get too into the specific features in that ontology system, but like the way that data is modeled, there's a whole bunch of domain knowledge that went into being able to produce that. And it took them decades to get there, or over a decade to get there. That is a really powerful sales pitch when you're talking to people who are at the very early stages of the adoption curve, but it wasn't there. And just thinking about the ontology piece alone, how much time that would save us from stumbling through something like implementing Neo4j or Neptune or something. Like those are other graph databases that are out there that you would buckle on top of your data pipelines and all of your other, your data lake house. But like, like that's what we're looking at doing. And it's like, this ontology system is so much better than what that has. And a lot of it has to do with like just the UI features, like I don't want to get too much into that, but like when you adopt a graph database to build an ontology, it doesn't come preloaded with a bitchin' UI that's going to help you understand this stuff,
So something that Karp says a lot in his interviews is that his biggest challenge is to convince organizations to not build it themselves. And do you think that is the problem? Because that leads kind of like to my next question, which is I know that in one of your videos you mentioned that your organization decided not to adopt Foundry, and do you think it's because there was some kind of flaw or something that you guys didn't like in Foundry, or is it because your organization thought like, oh, we can build something ourselves? Which one of the two is it? Is it like
I mean, I don't want to get
evil, or is it a you know, this is easy to build, we can do this ourselves? Like what?
Well, let me think here. So I don't want. This is another area where I need to be sensitive because I could be wrong in my assessments of things, and other people could be right. So I don't want to pretend that other people aren't bringing a valuable perspective. I think they are.
Right.
And good decisions are made when really smart people generally agree. And so maybe it's the right decision for us.
Right.
But I think the reason is that when you're when you see a product like that, and it's almost like you don't know what you're looking at because you're way down here on the journey. Like you're just like, we're trying to glue together Snowflake and SageMaker and like Neo4j and we're trying to, like, we don't understand. They're like 50 steps ahead of us. So like we're just not there. And so I think and I think that CARP is calling this out generally in the industry. Like they're over here we're trying to use wrenches, and they're over here like they got a spaceship, and we're like, what the fuck do we do with this? So, but like I think that is like the general impression is that we're just too immature to take advantage of this thing fully, and because they didn't have like a robust online set of resources, it made it even scarier because no one really knew. They couldn't, like, they had no experience with the platform before. They hadn't got certified in it before. So they just
that makes sense to me now why you criticize the fact that they need more online resources, an easier way to like understand and adopt the system, be a little bit more open about it. What are your thoughts as to why they're not so open about their platform or do not make it as accessible?
Okay, so my general feeling about that is that there's a lot of bodies buried in the code base. And let me try and tell you why I feel that way. It's not because of anything I saw with the platform. It's just the comments you hear online and their Medium blog where they talk about the way they've been building their monorepo. Their authors have mentioned that like they've really struggled with their code base, like trying to figure out how do they manage all this custom code, how do they manage the core product, build all the machinery around it, and that it's gone through several iterations, and some of the people who built the previous iterations are no longer there. Like CARP talked about that in that interview, like how he's talking about like you've got like 3 people in the world that know how to build this and you've got to make them happy, like that's totally right. I mean,
what's
that?
Stock-based compensation.
Yeah, right. Well,
just
yeah.
to keep these guys around.
The dirty secret of stock-based compensation is that when shares vest, people tend to leave. So but yeah, you do need robust stock-based compensation. It's kind of like a prereq. But what I'm really saying is like developers create a lot of job security by their own little tribal knowledge that they create, and it gets manifest in the code that no one else understands, and they create this like big ball of goo that like you can't touch it without it breaking and like sticking to you. Right. So like I think that the reason I think they can't really is the answer. Like they don't have a product yet that is capable of being generally available and maintain and supportable, because what comes with general availability is the entire ops support team that needs to like monitor and maintain that thing. And you can only do that if you've really got your shit together on the stack side. This is where I was talking about like what I do, which is scale companies. Like a lot of what I do is like we're building a monorepo, we're implementing an architecture that I know works. We're going to implement this way you write code and the way you check code quality, and it's all automated. like basically, like if you haven't done that in the past, you get this manifest code that represents the tribal knowledge of a bunch of people who are no longer there, and you can't maintain that stack. And I think that's where they're at, based on not anything I've seen, just based on what I read on their blog and what I see as comments from people that look like they work there. So, yeah. And also the fact that they have a hard time scaling the system down. He talks a lot about modular application design. That's something that like I know a hell of a lot about. And you don't have a problem scaling the application down if you have good modular architecture. You compose the system. So like in software, there's a famous quote by Rich Hickey about, simplicity is hard work, right? Like in software, it's really hard to make things simple because there's this paradox in software engineering. It goes back to like Leeman's laws of software evolution, which basically state like the more code you add, the harder it becomes to add more code. Like the more complicated you make the system, the harder it is to keep adding to that system. So that, and it's like an actual law, like it's like a law of physics, right? Like you're never going to get around this. You're not going to test your way out of it. You're not going to like, you know, somehow avoid this problem, this paradox of software engineering. It's a physical law that exists, right? So like if you don't make your system simpler and compose it out of genuinely simpler parts, it will eventually collapse under its own weight, you know? And I think they're at that like point where they're trying to figure out, how do we rebuild this and refactor this system to make it simpler, more composable, and then you can scale it down. And then it is easier to manage the customization layer, you know, and like all that kind of stuff. So, I mean, that's the general impression I get from what they say publicly.
Yeah.
From what I've read on their blog, from the comments people are leaving in my channel, you know.
We'll get a little bit more into scale. I actually have a question because I think that's something that Cart talked about.
By the way, I do want to say that's normal. Okay, so like people freaking out right now, like no, that's 100% normal. YouTube went through the exact same thing when Google.
Yeah, this is part of the process.
Yeah. In fact, there's only one company I know of on planet Earth that actually knows how to do this, and it's Google. And I've learned a lot from two guys that work at Google, Titus Winters and Hiram Wright, who are two engineers I've followed for a really long time, since 2017. And they were really instrumental in Google adopting test-driven development and having good code quality, building out their mono repo. Like they were a huge part of that. They're staff software engineers at Google. But anyway, it's totally normal, and I think there's only one company that does this well, and it's Google, and everyone else is kind of in the same boat as Palantir. So don't freak out, everyone. Yeah, it's like everyone's code is shit. Don't worry.
All right, last Foundry for Builders question for you here, and then we'll move on to some other interesting things that I want to get your take on. And so the last question is, and actually we have somebody in the comments that asked the same question, which is usually small startups don't have enough funds to be able to like adopt something like Foundry. What is their price? How does their price compare to like other competition? Like what is it? You know, based on what you experience.
I mean, I can't talk about the price. Let's frame it this way. I can go to AWS. Like, let's take the tools that I would adopt if I was building a Foundry-like platform to enable data-driven decision-making in my organization. I would probably choose Snowflake as my lakehouse and to set up all my data pipelines to ingest and be able to analyze and understand my data, and then to be able to govern my data, to build like data catalogs and distribute my data and have proper governance over that system with security, compliance built in. So I'm compliant with all the GDPR crap we have to be compliant with and everything else. So I'd probably buckle it. That'd be like my primary entry point. And then downstream of that, I'm going to have probably Databricks, you know, or I might implement AWS SageMaker. I would pray my organization would let me implement Databricks. But like if they didn't, be like SageMaker Studio. And that's where like all the science is going to take place along with the ML ops layer. So like you're going to build this ability for the data scientists and analysts to use notebooks, which are just a way to query data and run models against it and kind of do feature engineering. And you're going to operationalize it by basically maintaining control so that you know like what data sets the model was trained on, when it was released, who signed off on it, what the confidence score was. And then you can monitor that in production to see like the model degradation in real time. Little known fact, like models actually degrade over time. They get worse. And you're always retraining. So I'm gonna need features built into that SageMaker layer or the operations layer that AWS offers to retrain the model and spit it back out in production, all with audit trails. So I know exactly what happened each time. And so if I get an inference report, I can tell you why the model came to that decision, right? So that's like that ML AI ops layer. So now I've got this giant big ball of goo with several services bolted together over here with Snowflake over here. And then I'm probably going to have this other layer, which is like the analytics and telemetry data layer and logging layer. And so now you've got this like giant sort of set of services that took you 3 years to build and millions of dollars and cost you tens of thousands of dollars a month to maintain, right? So that's the true cost of building a Foundry light sort of platform that lets you do data-driven decision-making. It's going to be tens of thousands of dollars a month, and it's going to be millions of dollars of upfront investment, and it's going to be delayed value for 2 to 3 years, right? So like, in my opinion, Foundry is an order of magnitude cheaper and delivers value in weeks, in my opinion. And that they've also said that publicly, that Foundry will deliver value in weeks, not years. You know?
Yeah, man, you sound like a Palantir employee right now. That's exactly what they say, right?
Yeah, you know, they don't have they're missing developer advocates. You know, like the only reason I know that is because I set up a fucking YouTube channel and spent all this time like investing personally into understanding what they do. But like, you know, it doesn't have to be that hard. Like if they would just build a developer community, there would be hundreds, if not thousands of people who'd be saying the same thing at every company. You know, it's like, this is why it's so important to have developer advocates, because they can articulate that back to the decision makers without you needing to do it, you know? So, yeah.
All right, well, great, man. We'll move on from the Foundry questions. I hope that that answered some questions that folks had regarding Foundry.
It's frustrating, man. So it's so frustrating that like when I think through these problems, I'm just like, what the fuck? Like, why didn't we adopt it? And then like, then I'm like thinking in my head, like, why is it so hard for them to like, for Palantir to just do the obvious? But I don't know. It gets frustrating on some level.
Yeah.
How it comes across. Anyway, I'm not frustrated with the question. I'm just frustrated with the outcome. You know.
All right. Let's move on to scalability. So Alex Karp talked about something, and I've heard different channels kind of interpret it differently. I think even myself, and it's very possible that I'm wrong with how I'm hearing this. So I would like your thoughts on this. And this is the term that he used: thick versus thin products. So I'll kind of share what I think he meant by this, and then I would like to have your input. So when he talks about thick versus thin products, he's obviously saying that Palantir has a thicker product than, or more robust product than other companies, and the two companies that were mentioned in this interview were Snowflake and Databricks. So the way that I interpret this, because he said something, and I just kind of want to get your thoughts on this. He said, like, can we provide thin products? He said, yes, we are, and we are doing that right now, but our focus is in providing the thicker product.
Yeah.
Then later on, when other companies or other tech companies are noticing that the value is in thick products and they start providing those thick products, then we can split up our product and provide thinner products. Now, what I understood by this is, let me kind of provide an analogy and see if this works. But what I understood by this is, like, you have a set of tools, right? And you're trying to build a building or whatever. So what Snowflake is giving you is a wrench, and he's saying, go ahead with this wrench, you should be able to build this building. And what Palantir is saying is, like, no, we have a whole tool case. We can't provide at the moment a wrench if you need that wrench to solve that one problem, but you really need this entire tool case, and this is what we're really selling, because at the end of the day, everybody's going to need to be on this like operating system, this whole tool case that's going to allow you to connect with each other. So I think one misunderstanding was that I think people got the impression that right now their focus is to provide the wrench, the thin product, and then eventually they're going to want to provide the thick product and then provide the thin product again. But that's not what I got from it. What I got from it was, like, we're trying to provide the thick product, and if organizations just want something thinner, we can provide a Foundry for builders, because my understanding was that Foundry for builders is
they absolutely can. Like, let me just kind of interject here. Like, yes, they can absolutely provide a thinner platform, but like, let me explain to you why that's wrong, though. Like, and he's right to say that. Like, I almost think like he needs to fire whatever leader has been in his ear about this need, like, because it's really deterring from the broader mission. And let me explain to like where we're at today and why people want wrenches, because like, really, we're going from data. I don't know if you saw this in my slide, but like, you have this data coming in, and then it bottlenecks in engineering, and then the decisions have come downstream of that engineering bottleneck. You got a bunch of people who like to build shit in the middle of the decision-making process, right? Like, is it any wonder that a bunch of engineers are building Rube fucking Goldberg machines to like make a decision? Like, no, because all of your data is passing through this little small pool of people who love to engineer things. It's like, that's why they want wrenches. If we could get to the place where data goes directly to the decision maker and they could analyze it without the need of all those technical people in the middle, that's where the sweet spot is. No one's going to want wrenches when you can get there, and that's what Foundry enables. It's the spaceship that's going to let the non-technical person bypass the engineers. You know, it does take a lot of work to get Foundry up and running, just like anything else. It takes a lot of work to get Snowflake up and running, or Databricks, or anything else that's out there. So there is engineering support that needs to happen, but that's the same level of engineering support that everything needs, you know. But like the point is that because this process of making data-driven decisions is so new, it's a lot like how the internet was for, like, websites were for companies back in the day. You had to build your own data centers. You had to build out your own infrastructure. Engineers love that shit. They love to rack and stack servers and build networks and deal in complexity and fuck things up along the way. They love that, you know? Like, so it's no wonder that we're in this position, but it's like, no, you're right. Where we want to get to isn't this. Like, I don't want fucking 50 engineers in the middle of a data-driven decision-making process where they can fuck things up 10 ways to Sunday because there's maybe 100 ways to do this wrong and one way to do it right. Palantir knows the right way to do it. We want to get to the point where the data has no friction. It goes directly to the decision maker and they can analyze it and make a good decision in record time. Like, that's where we want to get to. So we want the engineers out of that process. And that's why I do believe like the models are really going to become the commodity at the end of the day. There's 100 companies making, you know, computer vision models or speech recognition models or recommendation engine. Like, dude, you can go online right now, like, go to GitHub. There's like 50,000 projects that are open source that will provide you some base model, you know. The point of that is that we will get to the point where you don't need data scientists to build you models. You just need a platform where you can plug in a model, like kind of like you do anything else now with pluggable software. Like, you install an extension in your browser. You need a platform where I can just install a model, train it on my data set without a technical person being in the middle of that. And Foundry is way ahead of the game. It enables that. So if businesses want to spend the next fucking 5 years, like, having their engineers fuck things up for them and build these Rube Goldberg machines, go right ahead, because the companies who fucking adopt Foundry are going to be like lapping you know. So it's like that. But that's why we're where we're at. It's like you got a bunch of people who want to build these things. Like, is it? I mean, they put the fucking word engineer in the title of software engineer because they do engineer. You know, they love to do that. That's their job. Now you've empowered them with like the most important initiative that a company has. Is it any wonder they want to go out and build this shit? You know, like, no, it's not any wonder. It's exactly what they always do until an alternative gets broadly adopted and that becomes the de facto standard, you know. So
question for you is, and again, I'm just trying to get a better understanding of what this is, but like Foundry for builders, would that be considered like a thinner product than Foundry itself? Is there a difference
they've
there?
said that. Yeah, they've said that. They've said it's for particularly, it's tailored for startups for sure.
So is that what he means by that we can provide thinner products? So like Foundry for builders would be a thinner product. Foundry for crypto.
I mean, they've publicly said it's modular, so they have the ability to compose the system to meet a use case. And so, yeah, they absolutely can do that based on what they've said publicly. You could infer that, like, yeah, absolutely, they can create a version of that suite that's tailored to a specific use case. What I don't think they can get around is like, it's an ecosystem, not a component, you know. So it's like you don't just get to have the component and build your own ecosystem, you know. So like, I know that might not make sense, but like, let me try and explain what an ecosystem is. So like when I come in and I implement a monorepo architecture at a company, it often starts with like the lowest level bits of that system, and that's like these reusable libraries and UI components, and we generally automate most of the creation of that code. So we have a common way, like a common way in which you plug those things into the broader system, and we automate most of that, and we automate the code review. And then on top of that, we start building the same things, but for modules. And then on top of that, we start building the same thing, but for applications. And then we start bringing in all the projects, and we start like building teams that do those migrations. And then we have a whole lot of shit that gets built on top of that, that does like continuous code quality analysis and pull request review. And we try and scale the PR system so you can merge changes faster, and you can start hiring thousands of engineers around that system, right? But that is a developer ecosystem at that point. You don't get to have an opinion about how you build shit. You will build it this way, you know? So that's what an ecosystem is. It's very opinionated about the way you work within it and the way you build things within it. And I don't think they can get around that. Whereas like, you know, a product like Snowflake, you build anything you want on that. It's just unopinionated about what goes on top of it or what kind of outcome it's trying to enable. There's no opinion there. but that's the exact problem we have, is that like because we're not working within an ecosystem that's opinionated about how you should work and how you should enable business outcomes, you get to have everyone's interpretation, and engineers love to have an interpretation, right? But like, what's funny about the engineer perspective is the last thing they're thinking about is business value. Like the last thing on their mind is like, how does this enable business value? You know, like what is the value on the other side of this? The value should be like the way I understand it is we want to be able to make better decisions faster based on a response to the data. And the reason you want to do that is like, let's imagine I'm a SaaS company and I sell a product, and for some reason I get spikes in my usage at different times of the year, right? Well, it's really hard to understand why that is unless maybe you've enriched your usage data with weather patterns, and you start to realize like, oh, whenever there's a fucking snowstorm that comes through the Northeast over here, my usage is going up because people are at home. And that's the actual correlating thing, you know, like, so maybe I like up my ad buys in those markets when we see bad storms coming in, you know? And that is an actual thing that happened at a company. So like, just so you guys know, that's not hypothetical. That actually is something that happened. So that's the kind of decisions you're trying to make with data-driven decisions. And it's like an order of magnitude better way to operate, you know? But that's the business value we're trying to enable, but the engineers aren't thinking about that. They're busy building their own ecosystems with their own tribal knowledge, and then quickly leave the company after their shares vest. And then the business owners are stuck with this fucking big ball of goo that no one knows how it works, with an 87% failure rate on top of it. So it's like, you know, like that. I mean, you know, flippant, but like that's sort of where we're at. Yeah.
All right. So in terms of scalability, do you still have the same concerns regarding Palantir? I know that initially you thought that they would have a really hard time to scale due to them providing forward deployed engineers. Where do you stand with that right now after you've received more information?
I don't think they're gonna have a hard time scaling it. I think the barrier to scaling it is, all right, so like with the scale I want to see enabled is hundreds of thousands of customers. To get there, I think they're going to probably have to go through a major rewrite of their platform, but so does everyone else. I don't have any doubts that they can get to thousands of customers with their current technology. You know, so I think the forward deployed engineers, I've really come to appreciate that role as we struggle through our own issues related to software integration. I don't know if you guys know, but like software integration's a fucking nightmare. You know, AWS will sell you 50,000 beautiful services, but they don't tell you it's going to take you, you know, a year to implement the damn thing and to get it into your organization where it's delivering something of value. So like, I really appreciate that they have a blueprint for how they will enable software integration at the customer level that makes the customer feel good and their teams feel good. And other companies rely on third parties to do that for them. Like, little known fact, AWS has a shit ton of consultants that help you implement that stack when you go to adopt it in your organization. So just because Palantir like has insourced that as opposed to like outsourcing it, I'm not holding that against them anymore. And I kind of understand more what that role is for. So no, and also I really appreciate hiring pipelines. Like that's also part of what I do is I build hiring pipelines that are scalable so you can get more people into them. And I've been reviewing their job board. It looks like they have a really good scalable pipeline for that role. That's hard to do as a company because you have to create your own boot camp programs, your own training programs. And they hire. And when you start seeing a company that's hiring lower level engineers, that's a good thing, right? Like that's an indicator. That's one of my KPIs that I have, which is like, what is the bar of talent I need to hire at my organization? One of my performance indicators is like, how good is your hiring pipeline? Can we bring in more junior people and make them good engineers, right? So like, I see that as a primary health check for them, and they're doing well. Yeah, I've changed my mind on that for sure.
Great. All right, so let's move on to a topic that you made a video on. You guys can check out CodeStrap on YouTube. He just type in the name CodeStrap and he's on there. Some folks are asking in the comments, where can they find you? Is there anywhere else they can find you? Is that your primary way of communicating to the public?
I'm on Discord. You can find me on Discord. Just a heads up, like I created my Discord and YouTube channel to advance software apprenticeships, like for businesses, so that like more businesses would adopt them and more people could find out how they can become a software apprentice. So like if you go on my Discord, there'll be a bunch of, channels in there related to like understanding various parts of that program, but there is like an investor talk channel that you can just go in there. And
is your Discord linked to your YouTube page?
Yeah. Okay. But if you ever want to ask me a question directly or something, then I'm on there. Just be nice.
Yeah, be nice, people. Be nice. Right. All right. So you made a video and you just kind of talked a bit about Edge AI, and I would like you to expand on that. So you said that Edge AI is the future, and I just want to hear a little bit more of your thoughts on that. And if you can kind of simplify it for us more simple folks, if you could just kind of simplify it of like, what does that look like in everyday life? What is Edge AI really solving? What kind of advantage do you see Palantir having by kind of trying to solve this problem? And I'm guessing Apollo has a role to play in this, but that's just my thoughts. I want to hear your thoughts.
Sure. Well, like, let's talk about the edge more generally is like IoT devices and networks that are distributed out. They're not like consolidated into single data center regions like an AWS region. So like when we talk about the edge, just understand that it's your phone, it's your laptop, it's your TV, it's your microwave, it's sensors on factory equipment, it's cameras, it's and it's also cell networks, it's hybrid cloud models where you have you sort of build your own region for AWS inside your infrastructure, but it's a decentralized model, and it also includes things like content delivery networks like Cloudflare or Akamai. But this is about decentralization. So this is a big topic. Like when we talk about decentralization, that is the future. It sort of has to be, I think, to enable the type of scaling we have in mind for technology. But like, what's the advantage? The advantage really at the end of the day is going to be a composable network, right? It's like, remember I was telling you, like, simplicity in software is really advantageous. Well, it also is in the standpoint of a network. And the reason is like you want to try and avoid like single points of failure. So like if you're in one AWS region and that region goes down, your app goes down. And I think they've had a couple outages recently. It's been in the news. I don't know if you guys have been following that or not, but like, so like a decentralized system allows you to avoid that. Like if one AWS region goes out, who gives a shit? I got 15 other regions. My software isn't running within that single region. It's running everywhere. It just rolls over to the next available region. But that's actually hard to do, like from a software design perspective, from a routing perspective, from how do I handle consistency between all these things? That's a big problem in computer science. But we are moving to that model. So like, like when I'm building APIs now that are going to power your app, like you use an app, it's connecting to some API out there, transferring data, getting information, whatever, sending telemetry data. I'm no longer building those within AWS regions. I'm building them to target Cloudflare. That's the automation I'm currently working on. I'm a huge fan of serverless technology because it works really well in these what we call isolates, where you essentially have like these little teeny virtual machines that take advantage of a little teeny part of the compute that's sitting out there at the edge, but they're stateless. They're not going to hold data around for you once the function is executed. But anyway, those types of environments where we're pushing our APIs, they're faster, they're more reliable. I can deploy them across multiple networks. I don't have to be stuck with one. And it just enables better outcomes for the user. And it also enables better outcomes for the business because I have more durability and high availability of my application now. But the edge AI specifically, let's talk about those use cases. So one of the things that we're seeing now is like devices that come preloaded with AI, right? Like you guys ever seen some of these toys that are coming out that are like, have speech recognition built in or computer vision built in? But like beyond the toys, like let's talk about things that are actually applicable, like a security system. Like, wouldn't it be cool if a security camera system was smart enough to know when there was an actual threat, right? Like I can identify you, I can identify your family, I can identify your friends, and that model is running on the cameras that are around your house. And it's only going to alert you when there's genuinely someone who's shouldn't be there, right? That's edge AI, right? That's a camera system that's smart, right? But the model is on the camera. It's not in a server somewhere. You know what I mean? So like, but now imagine trying to maintain those models over 1 million cameras.
Yeah.
Right. That's a harder problem than maintaining a model in one data center, like, so edge AI brings this order of magnitude of complexity that Karp is talking about. And that's absolutely something they're going to enable. Like, I don't think people have really thought through the complexity there. AWS, yes, has similar technology. They have their own way of managing model retraining and deployment out at the edge. So it's not like they're not going to have competition there. I think it's more about, like, again, that's a service that is not part of an ecosystem. They're expecting you to build your own ecosystem to make that service valuable for your organization. It's whether or not companies want to spend time doing that, or do they want to just go to a product that has already figured out how to make that ecosystem work and deliver value, But does that make sense, like, on edge AI, like what it is and what the edge is and what the problems are with that?
Yeah, good stuff, man. I didn't see it like that. So yeah. I feel like it has a lot of application, and whoever is really has dominant is dominant in that space would be able to take a big part of that market.
It's brand new. I mean, just keep in mind,
it seems like a really hard problem to solve.
It is. Well, and part of the problem is, like, it's brand new and models are big too. Like, it's really hard for me to actually ship models as part of my app to your phone because they're really, really big, and you get limits on storage and all that kind of stuff. So this is a brand new space. Like, we're just now experimenting in the space at the company I'm at. It didn't exist 4 years ago, really. So, like, just keep in mind, like, we're at the very early stages of the adoption curve. Like, it's barely happened. And most of the models that are out there are being used on device are either part of the OS, like it's part of Google's OS, or part of embedded Google products, but most of them are probably in custom IoT space, sensor data, things that are monitoring sensor data, things that are responsible for security systems, like purpose-built devices, in other words. So it hasn't reached, like, in my opinion, like that, how, like, today anyone in their, anybody can build an app and put it on your phone, basically, like, we're not there yet. We're not in that space yet.
Right. Here's a good question from the comments. Chris Patel is asking, will improvements in hardware such as GPU, compute, and I can't even say the word, miniaturizing, I guess, of physical storage help accelerate adoption of edge computing?
Oh yeah, absolutely. It's also going to make AI and ML better. So, like, there is a limit to the amount of science you can do. That's a hard limit, which is just how much time do you have to run these processes, right? Where you're going to train the model, that takes time, and it's most of the limit is the CPU. So, like, as we get better CPUs, and hopefully as quantum computing comes online too, because quantum computing is going to solve a lot of this problem where the bottleneck in ML and AI is, like, the CPU, and feature engineering in particular. That could really unlock the space where we can start getting better, more and more iterations. This is a process of iteration. I don't know if you guys have kind of figured that out as I'm talking about this, but, like, ML and AI is really a process of iteration. And the big bottleneck in that right now is the CPU. So, like, but the more we can iterate, the better we can be. So, like, if we start opening up that bottleneck and we can go faster, you're going to get better products, So it's, yeah. And then on device, yeah, absolutely. I mean, of course, because the storage limitations we have right now from, say, Apple or Google, or, like, a hard limit. So yeah, if we can have more storage, we can put more models on device. Right now we're even thinking, I floated the idea the other day, like, let's build a purpose-built device to solve this use case we have, so that we can have our own models that take up tons of space, right? And we can actually tailor that device to give us all of the resources we need to make those models hum. So, like, but yeah, absolutely, that's going to be a big breakthrough.
And then, as a quick follow-up, how does 5G play into this? Does it have any role in it? Does it enable any of this, or not really? Is it just making our planes crash?
It's making our planes crash, right?
Did you see that article about?
I did. Yeah, I was like, oh shit. That's nothing. I hadn't actually thought about that before. So it's interesting to see how much merit there is there. But no, I think I don't think 5G plays into it beyond the fact that more bandwidth is a good thing, and it will just enable, faster downloads and better connectivity in places that have it. Like, one of the things we struggle with and making all of this decentralization work is just the connectivity layer, like how good is the internet connection, and that'll help enable lots of things beyond what we're talking about. But you've got to have really good wireless technology to like make that decentralized network work. But the other thing they're doing too is like a lot of these networks, as they're being built, they've already figured out that they want to work with AWS and provide compute in those areas. So like part of building out these new networks has been forward thinking and saying like, how can we bring AWS onto our network right at the edge, not later on down the road, and that enables better onboarding, like better experiences for the businesses and for the consumers. So I think there's an infrastructure component baked into 5G that we didn't know about until recently, that they had already been figuring out, like, oh, well, as you're building this, why don't we work with you and get our services deployed out to the edge so they're more decentralized, more stable. So, yeah.
All right. So I have to say, so there was an offline conversation that you and I had a few months ago.
Yep.
And that in that conversation, we were talking about collaborating and making a video on like what the future of Palantir can be, something along those lines. And you talked about Palantir adopting some kind of crypto, and I'll let you talk about that a little bit more, but adopting some kind of crypto, a way to have like your own, I guess, decentralized ID where you can, instead of having like a Google sign in, you just sign in with your decentralized ID. You can talk a little bit more about that, but I just got to say, man, like you've been trying really well with the company, because we didn't follow through with that or anything. But then like a couple months later, you hear Palantir announcing their Foundry for crypto, and so I would like to hear your thoughts on what Palantir's where do you think, what kind of place do they have in the crypto space? What do you think can play out there? And then maybe later on, just we can talk a little bit about like future products. What do you think?
No, definitely. I love to brainstorm.
The video that we're going to make was based on like what consumer products can they make. So I kind of
exactly.
There's a little insight to that. But why don't you attack that crypto question first, though? How does Palantir play a role here? What do you think they're trying to do with this?
So like their secret is they know the future is decentralized, while all the rest of us think it's like haven't even considered that question, Absolutely. So that's their secret. I'm not saying that anything that they haven't said publicly. I'm not saying it's a like intellectual property secret. It's like in the terms of Peter Thiel's secret, that's their secret.
Yeah.
They know that the future is decentralized. And so like what I was thinking about is like, well, a company that knows that, is probably already figuring out like, how do we work in a world where there aren't siloed businesses? There are just consortiums that operate together, but in a different way than they do that today. Because businesses do operate that way today. There are consortiums, but they all have their own centralized data silos. They all have their own centralized compute silos. But Palantir is saying that no, that's not going to work in the future, and it's not going to work specifically because will be failing infrastructure and institutions that simply make that model unviable, and also that there's lack of trust that exists today. So think like things like the SolarWinds hack, or like internal employees doing things they shouldn't be doing with data because the systems weren't designed to have consistency checks and validation to make sure that that person is actually authorized to do that thing, not outside of your company. Like, there is a better security model enabled by blockchain through consensus than there is in a centralized model, right? So like within a centralized model, as long as you're an admin, as long as you're a super user, you can do whatever the fuck you want to do. So like, especially if you're using databases that aren't immutable. And in a decentralized model, you can solve that problem. And I think they know that in the future, like if a company is thinking in decentralized, they're going to start trying to figure out how can they solve problems in that space where you don't own your code, and it's not your data, it's like the shared environment where the data exists, and you all agree on the terms in which people can access that. And that decentralization allows for, say, formally verifiable code that everyone agrees does what it says it does and nothing else. And it's impossible to hack because you would have to hack every node on that decentralized network to be able to get around that, which is pretty much impossible. Or that a change to data could somehow be hidden. It can't, right? So like, I just, in my mind, if decentralization is a thing, they're thinking about how do we solve these problems and how do we provide things like fraud detection in that kind of environment, So like, in my mind, I was just like, they're going to get into crypto. It's only a matter of time. They have to. I think that because it's not crypto, like people say crypto, what they really mean is like decentralized networks. And if you replace the word crypto with decentralization or decentralized networks, it becomes a whole different paradigm shift. And you'll start realizing that like, it's not cryptocurrency, stupid. It's the decentralized network, right? And why we want it is because we want supply chains that are immutable. If you got, parts from slave labor in China, I want to know about it. And I want to know you didn't audit your fucking data to hide it. Right. And that's going to be increasingly important if wars break out. Right. So I think, and then Karp is talking about this in this interview, if you're in an environment where you're at war and you physically are not allowed to do business in regions.
Yeah, it was a bit doom and gloom. there's a part of the interview that was a little dark.
But how do you do that in an environment where there are hacks and there are super users, and because it's a centralized authority, you have to rely on what they're telling you. And as a business, you're taking an enormous risk doing that,
Yeah.
So if you're thinking about like why decentralization matters, and just don't use the word crypto, you'll start seeing that, there's all these use cases for a platform like Foundry where it's already this ecosystem that's set up to work in this environment. And if they start figuring out that like, there's consumer applications of this, like what is the consumer application? Well, the first one that comes to my mind is that like in a decentralized system, you don't get to have the consumer's data. Like you don't get to have user data anymore. And that's already, like the writing's on the wall, people. Like if you haven't seen the move in laws and in, governments to block big tech from owning your data, then you've been asleep at the wheel, I think, So the first thing I saw was like decentralization of data. And what is that? Well, this is again why I think the crypto projects out there, I've said it before and I'll say it again, all the brightest minds in computer science are working in that space. So if you think it's going to fail because we have a down market, you're fucking out of your mind. Like there's way too many smart people. They came up with a solution for this 5 years ago. It's called BitID. It's like you basically have a crypto wallet and you take a picture of a QR code on a website. It will verify you are who you say you are through a cryptographic signature. Within that QR code is the purpose of what you want to transfer to this entity online. Maybe you want to pay them for something. So built into the protocol was this ability to verify you are who you say you are and pay for a product without ever giving your personal data or credit card to the other company, right? That was out years ago, but that's the first obvious space. And also because Palantir is big on civil liberties and they have a whole civil liberties division, I would have to think that one of the biggest initiatives they're talking about is like, how do we allow users to interact in that ecosystem? And also that the industry is moving that way. FIDO off.
Let me push back a little bit. Wouldn't you think that the crypto space, specifically like the decentralization movement of the crypto space, wouldn't you think that they would push back on an organization like Palantir due that they work for one of the most centralized institutions out there, which is the U.S. government, or any government? Do you think there'll be some kind of pushback on that sense?
Oh, hell no.
No.
I think Charles Hutchinson and Karp are friends. Like, I don't know if you know that, but like they hang out, dude. I think.
Yeah.
I could be wrong about that, but like, no. And specifically because Alex Karp runs Palantir, and Peter Thiel run Palantir. These are libertarians,
Right.
I mean, Karp's a socialist.
Karp's more of a progressive, right?
I don't know what that means. Like he said, he's a progressive of the 70s, and I'm like, so you're a socialist? Like what the fuck? I don't know. Like that's. I'm just gonna bake it. I'm gonna distill it down to the lowest common. But what my point is that
he sounds like a libertarian.
Do you really fucking believe that someone who values liberty and has thought as much about it in their life as Karp, who has a PhD in philosophy, like, do you really fucking believe they're the bad guys? Like, because if you do, you're just stupid. Like you've got an agenda. Like, no. Yeah. And I know that the people in the crypto space who matter deeply respect those people. So, no, not at all.
Right. Fair enough. And then, so in the crypto space, so you're talking about decentralized signatures and things like that, IDs. Who don't you think that they have a lot of competitors trying to do that? Been trying to do that for a while. I would think that like Coinbase would be a competitor in that space, just because they are like.
I buy Coinbase stock.
Yeah, me too, man. Me too. They dropped to 219.
I bought yesterday.
I was like, again, I'm just like, I bought, and then it dropped to 206.
Every buy order, I have to take a shot. It's like I'm just like, oh Jesus, what am I doing? But
I'm gonna start sharing with people when I buy so they could just wait a little bit more, because usually when I buy, it drops.
No, every time, dude. I haven't hit bottom once, you know, it's like so funny. But I don't care because, like, I guess, like I've said before, the multiples I'm interested in, it doesn't matter. I'm just trying to like can stick with my plan, which is to keep buying.
So would you regard Coinbase a competitor in that space with what you're talking about?
Oh yeah, but I mean, I don't see it as a competitor in the sense that, like, you know, how many apps are there that do chat, and how many apps are there that do photo sharing, and how many apps are there that do social networking? You know, like, I mean, there's room in this market for dozens and dozens of players. And I think what matters, it's kind of like, all right, first just think about why identity matters. Let's just get back on that track, and then I'll talk about why you're going to have a lot of players in the space. So like, identity matters because it's, one, we don't want to rely on central authorities, and we want to have the user own their own data. But it also matters because it's like the entry point in a decentralized network is you have to be able to verify you are who you say you are with cryptographic signatures that no one else can emulate or replicate, you know, and we need to adopt elliptic curve cryptography to make that work. And so, like, you have to have these wallets, right? And so, like, that's why, like, MetaMask and other browser extensions are the entry point into Web 3.0, right? But what is Web 3.0? Well, Web 3.0 is really the metaverse. You know, like, when people talk about what Web 3.0 is and the decentralization, what they're really talking about is the metaverse. And the metaverse, if you really distill it down, is a place where value is created within that ecosystem, right? There's no real world association with the value, whatever that is, whether that's the cryptocurrency, whether that's the NFT, whether that's the community you build, whether that's whatever, you're standing within that community. There'll be this system of value that is created solely within that environment, but you need to be able to verify who you are and what you own. And the only way to do that is through these crypto wallets that enable elliptic curve cryptography to power these signatures. So it's the entry point to the metaverse. If you really think about it, you really distill it down, what's happening is, in a decentralized world that we call the metaverse, you need an entry point. But people are going to pick the entry point that they like best. You know, like, I might like some version of a Cardano wallet that some development group came up with because I like them, you know, or like, I'm going to adopt Coinbase because I'm an old fuddy-duddy and I appreciate regulation and I know that they're not doing anything shady, you know, or I might adopt Palantir because I like their commitment to civil liberties and they were a mover in this space, you know, like, but that's why there's room for multiple players, because in a decentralized future, you're also talking about decentralized communities that have their own value systems, you know, and their own, and that the people who really put the pieces on the chessboard early are going to be the people that create the communities first, and they're going to be the people that, like, get adoption, but also build a brand, you know, and build this, like, loyalty system, right? But there's a lot of room for that. And we're talking about billions of people, you know, so, like, I mean, you can imagine how many versions of this there are going to be, and how many. At some point, it just becomes something that people could create on their own, you know. So anyway, that's why I feel that there's a lot of room in that space.
Good stuff, man.
Yep.
Good stuff. Hey, I have to say, man, I really appreciate you just being on here. I know that the last time you were on here, we said that you have to get your hands on Foundry, and it happened.
Yep.
And it happened. Yep. So I think that was great, because that was before Foundry for Builders or anything like that. And you're like, I got to get my hands on Foundry, and we put it out there, man. We're like, you will, and when you do, you got to come back on the channel and talk about it. You're true to your word, man. You came back on the channel and we talked about it. So I do really appreciate that. Let's talk a little bit about the company and stock and where it's at right now, where we see it going and things like that. I think, you know, it's a bloody red market, as we opened up in this conversation. It's a definitely bloody market out there. It's pretty scary when you see your portfolios go down 40, 50, 60%. And if you are a Palantir holder, you're most likely down on your position, because they were only at like the $10 level for I want to say, like, maybe no more than a month. And then they were just like at the $20, $30 level for the, you know, the remainder of the last 11 months. And then the last 2 months it's crashed. So most likely your cost basis is somewhere up in the 20s, and right now it's trading down at 13 something.
I'm in double-digit loss territory for sure. So,
yeah,
but I mean, I don't care. Again, like my whole strategy was like, I just want to try and buy within a channel. I don't like placing buys when there's a lot of volatility, because it's just like, fuck, what, you know. I want to maximize the multiple, and it sucks to be buying where you're like, oh shit, I could have bought at a lower thing, and that will compound my multiple. If it gets into single digits, I mean, geez, man, we're talking like order of magnitude bigger return at that point. I don't know, but yeah, no, portfolio's red, deep red. I don't care. I actually, and I was telling you before, I sold positions. So I sold Microsoft, I sold Google, I sold Activision. I was kind of bummed out, but I already had a really good profit on Activision. So like it bummed me out. I could have probably upped my return, but whatever. I took profit on Activision specifically because like I'm high conviction on two stocks, Coinbase and Palantir. Those are the two that I think are, and I'm operating in a fund that's a growth fund. Like the whole purpose of this fund is 10x to 20x returns. Like it's not there to like, it's not my main source of retirement or whatever. But like, so I sold these positions specifically to make room, and I took losses on almost every position I sold except Activision, so I could have cash to keep buying. And I'm about halfway through that cash right now. But it does hurt to buy and just, like I just know the market's going to keep going down. Like it's going to keep fucking going down for a long. And I mean, we may see really, really, really cheap prices. So I just don't want to burn through that cash too quick. I want to keep some powder dry and be able to take advantage of it. But it does hurt. I don't look at the gain or loss. I just go into my portfolio to buy now, and I just don't focus on it, and just focus on like how cheap I can get this stock. If I can get it, if it goes down to like 10, that's going to be shocking, but it looks like it's headed there.
It's incredible that like you and I have pretty much like the same strategy here, and I'm in the same exact position. I bought some companies that I thought were safe and that money was going to rotate to those companies. Some of those were like Intel, and they did well. They gave me like a 15% return, and then when I started seeing the market crash, I did sell my Intel because I figured I want to buy companies that are going down, and one of them was Palantir and the other one was Coinbase. And I think that we had a conversation about Coinbase the first time around, and you asked me like, well, why would you put it in Coinbase rather than like buy specific crypto like Bitcoin or Ethereum? And just my strategy for that was like, it's pretty simple. When Bitcoin is selling off, Coinbase is making money. When people are buying Bitcoin, Coinbase is making money. If people are rotating for cryptocurrency to NFTs, Coinbase will be making money because they're building their NFT platform. So this is a company that's really dominating like that crypto market. I think they're doing really well. And but yeah, like those are the two companies that I've been buying heavily into. Netflix is looking really interesting to me right now. That crash I think was just an overreaction in the market. But overall, man, like I think that I don't do margin. Two, I have my own investment like retirement fund, as you mentioned. And then all the dry powder that I've had, that's exactly like you. Like it's a growth stock portfolio, so I'm expecting a large return. And I know that the best returns you get are during markets like this. It's actually counterintuitive. But when you're chasing the stock, when it's 30, 40, 50, that's the best way to like lose money. And that's why in all my videos, I've always said, I try to keep my buying of Palantir between 20 and 25. If it gets anything, or 25 and below, if it gets anything over that, I just kind of hold off, accumulate cash. It goes back down because it's going to be a volatile company for a while, especially because it's a company that people, I feel, just don't have a good grasp of what it does, how it can monetize itself, how it can grow. And I just think that it's going to grow. There's going to come an inflection point where it's going to grow much faster than what people expected, and then that's when all the smart money and everything's going to rush in. But in times like these, it's hard to hold. It's hard to stay like optimistic. But I'm definitely optimistic, man. I think what the investor community really needed was that Alex Karp interview. I don't think I've ever seen an interview where Alex Karp really lays out like the future, how they see the future and how Palantir plays a role in that future. And I did see that as soon as he came out, so some of the folks that cover Palantir, all of a sudden like a breath of enthusiasm came back into them, you know.
Yeah.
And I think that's really important. I think that, you know, the Palantir organization, company, CEO, they need to be a little bit more active on that, in that role of like painting the future for its stockholders. You know, like what is it that they are trying to attempt to do? How do they attempt to monetize that? And what's the impact and value proposition that they're bringing for the world? Because, you know, as somebody that, like, whatever I understand from Palantir, it's not so much like I really have to do some digging for it, you know. And I feel like other companies do a better job at communicating that vision, and hopefully they can do that. You know, there was a question here on the comments, or it was more of a comment that I wanna bring up and get your thoughts on. But they were talking about, let me look it up. This Chris Patel guy's been putting some good stuff on the comment section. Something along the lines of, and I know that this is something that you've talked about, but of creating a community. What was the exact comment? I'm trying to look it up.
No worries, dude.
Yeah, so we need to push for Palantir to build a developer community. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah.
And just kind of talk about like the benefits of that. But what are your thoughts on that? And I totally agree. I do think that that's something that the more developers get on there, the more they talk about it, I think the more that they'll have like more of a grassroots, you know, foundation.
Yeah, I mean, I talked about it earlier too. Is that the normal way? What did Apple do when it was releasing iOS? Does anyone remember? Was anyone around, like, as an engineer? Like, I was an engineer. They went around city to city trying to convince people to build on their platform. They built relationships. They had conferences to learn how to build, you know, apps for iOS. And they tried to explain the commerce and how the sharing of revenue would work and all that kind of stuff, because they knew that that platform would go nowhere unless developers built on it. And Microsoft did the same thing. Amazon spends a shit ton of time every year with, you know, reInvent, putting on a huge event to get developers psyched to build things on AWS. You will die without a development community that backs your product and wants to build on it. You know, so like, it's just a prereq. Like, don't debate it. Don't think about it. Don't overthink it. You've got to have a solid development community if you're ever going to get anything off the ground. And that includes like open source projects. That includes crypto. One of the key metrics of a crypto project is like how many developers are working on it. That's like the one you can just look at and go, fucking, this project's dead. You know, if there's no developers working on it, don't invest in it. So like, it's just a key metric. You have to do it. So what happens is once you get those developers excited about your product, not only do they remove the barrier to entry at the organization level because they know what the risk profile is much more. So like, one of the things we struggle with when we go to adopt technology is like assessing the risk profile of this product, right? Like, is it good? Does it do what it says it does? Is it well maintained? Is it going to be easy to integrate, or how hard will it be? Not easy to integrate. How hard will it be to integrate? But your developers can answer those questions if they know how to use it already, right? And if they've already been trained on it, they're certified on it. They can give you a much better estimate than if it's a black box no one's used before, right? So like, that is super important for the decision makers, including people like me who are trying to evaluate it to give a go or no go on an acquisition. So like, just understand that like, the developers are the lifeblood of like anything that happens in this industry. If developers don't like you, you're out, dude. You're done. And which is really funny, because think about Microsoft's investment in the developer community. They fucking bought GitHub. Right? You know, like they built TypeScript, you know, like they are making huge investments in the developer community. And that's actually why I'm really bullish on the company, is that like, they've turned that whole image around. And people who aren't as old as I am don't remember how hated Microsoft was for years in the development community. And they were putting out dog shit product during those years. So like, understand that, yeah, you've got to have a thriving developer community that supports your product, that creates value. But here's the other thing of why it's valuable, is that they're going to figure out ways to use your product you didn't think of, you know, like, so like, think about skateboarding, right? Like, skateboarders have figured out how to, you know, turn architecture into something that the architects never thought of that it would ever be used for, right? Like, developers do the same shit. They figure out ways to use your product that you never thought would ever be useful, right? Or you wouldn't even consider that use case, right? So like they're the ones that build the value. Palantir can't build all that value all by themselves. All this future we're talking about, the future we want to see with decentralization and with AI and ML, Palantir's not going to build that. The developers are. And they're the ones that are going to deliver the values. Palantir is going to give them the training, the foundations, the tools, the ecosystem that I keep harping on to work with them to do that. And that's what iOS did. That's what all the successful companies do, is they provide an ecosystem in which developers can build value. And this also, guys, if you're investing in crypto projects, make that your key driver, right? What value is being built on this chain? Are developers building value on the chain? If they're not, just fucking stay away from it. So like, but that's really what it is. It's all about building value. Does that make sense?
Yeah. All right. So I think one thing I would really like to see is your voice kind of get out there a little bit more. My channel's small, man. I only have like 6,000. I think I'm going up to 7,000. Go ahead, subscribe. Help me get to 10,000. But my channel's small, man, and I would like your voice and your experience to be like shared a little bit more with the Palantir community. I think one of my favorite channels when it comes to Palantir is Jackson's channel. It's called Palantir Vision right now.
Totally.
I would love to get you on that channel, man, like for you to just connect with him and be able to, again, talk a little bit more about Foundry. Because I think maybe if I'm lucky, 2,000, 3,000 people would watch this video. But I think that, getting him on the channel, and he does a great job with interview questions and things like that. So would you be open to that?
Yeah, totally, man.
Right, man.
I dig Jackson stuff. I subscribe to his channel. I've been watching him since the beginning. So we've
been on the channel like twice. Let's get you on to Tom Nash too. I think he has a pretty big Palantir following. And then hopefully we get you on.
Tom's awesome, dude. He cracks me up every time he watches videos.
Tom's the best, man.
He's like therapy right now. It's pretty awesome. It's like just watch Tom's videos and calm down a little bit. It's pretty awesome.
Yeah, he's good. Let's get you on to Tom Nash, and then hopefully to Dave Lee. Dave Lee does a more serious. I think Dave Lee by far like the best interviewer. He asks really good questions.
He asks great questions. Yeah,
he's lately been doing a lot more Palantir coverage and interviews. So I would. Hey man, I know that they would like to interview somebody that's had firsthand experience with Palantir Team and Palantir software. And I definitely appreciate you being on this channel and letting me be the first channel to like interview you. I definitely appreciate that, man.
Yeah, man, I love our conversations, dude.
I love it too, man.
We always have good combos,
Yeah, keep on coming on, man. I think I am gonna change my channel name one more time. Let me get your thoughts on this. So you like the Palantrillion name, right?
Love it. I think that's awesome, dude.
I love it, dude. I'm gonna go with it. I put out a poll on Twitter and they said no, and a lot of the feedback was like, I don't think it's gonna be a $1 trillion company. And I was like, it's the idea, man. The idea of what if it's an 800 billion? That's good enough for me, man.
You're setting yourself up for some serious shit talking in the comments though, because
for sure
the company's gonna go lower during this market. They're gonna be on there just making fun of you nonstop.
And that's why I want to make it a Palantrillion channel, dude. It's like I'll go against the curve, and then one of two things happens: either they're right and I was wrong, and all that smack talk was reasonable, or I was right and I'm gonna have years to brag, right?
Yep.
I made a video where I was like, I looked back on the channel and I was like, I was really the first video on YouTube to call Palantir $1 trillion company.
I saw that. That was so cool. I was like, oh man, he was the first one. But yeah, people think we're crazy, but they think everyone's crazy. So, but yeah, I see a future where that could happen. But again, it's the developers who are going to build that value. So.
Yeah, man. So that's why I think it'd be great if you could get on I'm sorry, Palantir Jackson's channel, Palantir Vision. I think he has good contact with the Palantir team too. So hey man, I think if we start pushing in that pushing.
Maybe this little consortium of people will kickstart their developer community. You know,
exactly, man. Sometimes
cool.
An organization doesn't know that it needs to do this unless they find the need. And if there's a quite a few YouTube channels with thousands of subscribers saying, "Hey, build a developer community," they're like, "Hey, there's a need for this. Let's do it." So I think it'd be great for you to just get on there and share that, and I'm sure one way or another, somebody from the Palantir team this will get to their ears. I would also say, because Palantir is actually really good at allowing the retail investors to ask questions through that. I think it's called Say, or the app. So if you're a shareholder, if you hold stock, you can go into their app and ask questions for their quarterly report. I don't know if you knew this. So going on there and just asking a question would be great. And I think one of the questions would be, "Hey, would you build a developer community?" Instead of asking, "Hey, why are you spending so much on stock compensation?" Or "When is CARP going to stop selling?" I think that those questions really don't really get us anywhere. I think that the idea would be to push them towards a direction that will hopefully make them profitable. Not that we would know what that looks like, but I think that the more the community engages, I think the more the company would engage.
I would never underestimate the power of stupid people in large numbers, right? Like, never underestimate the power of a bunch of people who share a common vision. I think we saw that last year, right? Like, we can move markets. It's just, and you can certainly move companies in a direction. I think it's just build the community. Like, we got to build a thriving community that wants to see this decentralized future and wants to see Palantir at the forefront. And I think that you shouldn't undersell the ability for that to move the needle. And yeah, I think as a community, we could do a lot together. And I think, getting together with other people who are high conviction is the right way to do it, because then you can actually share that vision and share that message with more people. And hopefully that community gets bigger, not smaller. And that power to move markets, actually can come to fruition. I'm not talking about the stock price. I'm talking more about, like, why won't you enable the developer community? Like, why can't you get us certified on this platform? Why can't you help us help you build the future? But so anyway, I think there's a lot that could be really cool about that. And I would love to just try and share, like, of the people you mentioned, I think Jackson probably digs most into the technical aspects of Palantir. But he's not, like, I don't think he's a software engineer or anything like that. But
no. There's this guy, man, that I've been watching lately. Let me see if I can pull up his name here. Cyberfam. There you go. Yeah. Dude, I kind of for the last 3 months I stepped away from watching YouTube and all that. I told you I was in the middle of, like, moving to Oregon and all this stuff. So that's why I wasn't doing YouTube. And then all of a sudden, like 3 months later, I started doing YouTube again. And all of a sudden I see all these new faces covering Palantir that I didn't even know existed, and some of them are doing really good content.
Yeah, Cyberfam's great, dude. I really appreciate his perspective.
That'd be a good, maybe a conversation between you and him would be great, man.
Oh, totally. I would love to have another, like, technical person to kind of bounce ideas off of and sort of share that same perspective. And he's really hands-on with the platforms he integrates and stuff. So I think we share a common, like, cynical vision of the state of the industry and how hard shit is, like, currently. And like like the services, the wrenches that are being sold are just, like, they totally undersell the integration work, and people don't really understand, like, how hard it is to put those things together into something that delivers value. I get a sense that he shares, like, a lot of the same ideas, and, like, he's very much on the same level. It'd be great to get, all these people together.
There you go, man. A Palantir roundtable. Let's do it. Yeah, definitely, man. I would just enjoy watching a video with you and Cyberfam just going at it for an hour, man, and just talking about all the technical stuff. Even though I would suggest, like, Jackson as a moderator, because I think sometimes you guys would probably get too technical, and we're gonna need somebody like, can you dumb it down for us simple folk down here?
Well, Jackson's great, dude.
Jackson's good, man.
I really hope he's a shareholder, and because he's been high conviction on this from day one, and I've really appreciated his vision he has too. Like, he has a perspective on where he thinks that company can go, you know, and like into consumer products and other areas, you know, like, but anyway, I really hope we get a, you know, like, let's think of it this way, like, that if they just do what they say they're going to do, like their growth rates are, you know, at the rate they say, 30% a year for whatever, like if you're continuing to buy now, like you're easily going to get like a 2x return just on, you know, their projected growth rates. Yeah. But if they do what we think they're going to do, you know, it's going to be like 10x return. So I really hope that everyone who is investing gets to see that 10x multiple and can tell the world we were right, you know, like we knew what we were talking about.
Oh, and so does the team though. So does like Harp, you know, when he says that this company should be 10x, 20x bigger, I think they mean it. You know, that 0 to 1 book there, where Peter Thiel talks about what the
absolutely. They didn't found Palantir for it to be a $50 billion company.
Oh, dude, man, that 0 to 1. This is what I tell people about that 0 to 1 book. That 0 to 1 book was a sales pitch of Palantir. Like it was them letting you know what Palantir is going to be, man. You know what's amazing, dude? Like that book was written in 2014, I believe, and he was already calling Tesla a monopoly company. In 2014, dude, Tesla was like in the verge of like bankruptcy. I think they were in the verge of bankruptcy like in 2016, 2017. But Tesla was nowhere near being able to like be considered a monopoly company at all, man. It had like a lot of risk. Nobody would see Tesla in 2014 and say one day this company's gonna be a monopoly company. But Peter Thiel was like, yeah, that's gonna be a monopoly company, like a Google, like a Microsoft.
And he also says never bet against Elon, you know. So
true. And then I think that, you know, he has that same vision for Palantir. And it was really clear to me through the Alex Karp interview that Alex Karp sees like, oh, our addressable market, you guys don't even understand the market that we're going after. You know, like it's not just commercial, it's not just government. Like the market's bigger. What we're trying to do is bigger. Like, do you know what kind of software we've developed in the government space with all that free money and all that rich data? Like there's things that we've developed that you guys never even heard of. That's basically like what I took from that, man. And I was like, yeah, man, like this is like folks don't understand. Like they criticize the company for being a 17-year-old company. And I'm like, that's the company's strength, man. Like the fact that it's been working on its software for 17 years.
I make this point a lot. I think people need to understand though, like the technology to enable a foundry didn't get democratized till 2017. So like, it's really unfair to say they've been in business 17 years. You simply couldn't operate foundry at a profit until 2017. So like, just understand that before then we were throwing copious amounts of money at building in-house tech stacks to do machine learning and AI initiatives, and only governments and FANG companies could afford to do it. So like 2017 was the year to use that as the starting point. And really, if you look at it, as like 2020 was the exact perfect time to take the company public.
Yeah.
So anyway, in terms of technology, like in terms of the technology being affordable and could actually enable good outcomes, it was really 2020. So like people just need to shut the fuck up when they start banging on the company about 17-year-olds and can't turn a profit. Well, no shit, no one could, you know. So what are you saying? You're just telling me you don't know jack shit about technology when you're saying stuff like that. So like, yeah.
All right, man. I think you've helped a lot of folks like conviction in their you know stock purchase right now, coming from like a more technical perspective, being able to break down what the software is, what's the potential, and all of that. And I think that really helps people. So I definitely do appreciate you doing that.
I could be wrong, you know, like just understand it's a high risk game. You know, the bottom's always zero.
Absolutely, man. Absolutely. No one really knows the future. No one really knows what's going to happen. This is just our opinion, and I think just your opinion's a little bit more valued now.
No, you're an expert in the space. I've seen the platform. I've met with the people, and I bought more. So that should tell you where I'm at. You know.
Dang, I like that. Say that again. You met with the people, and you bought more.
yes. I've seen the platform. I met with the people, and I bought more. So that, you know, definitely. Yeah. I'm super high convinced. It enforced my original thesis. I'm in, man. There's no turning back now.
So, yeah, and I got to say, you've been tracking really well with the company, man, in every aspect, and them going into the crypto space, and them what their software is, and what the stock was going to do.
You checked my original video. It was before the first demo day, and I was calling it the Big Data OS and exactly how it works. And you know, what I assumed would be the way what Foundry would enable through decentralization. You know, like I think that that reinforces, like, because, and the reason I wanted to do that, I told you, was like I wanted to get it out before demo day because I want to have a way to track my thesis. You know, like I want to be able to go back and see how I'm doing.
Dude, when they announced the like Foundry for crypto, I was so bummed that we didn't do that video.
Yeah, I know, dude. It would have been like,
I was just like, this is what we were talking about. Like,
I was like,
I went to look back at that because I don't know if you remember, I recorded our conversation. It was offline, but I recorded the conversation just so I can go back and do notes on it. And I was just like, you know, I went to go back and listen to it, and I was like, dang, like CodeStrap was tracking really well. So yeah, man, I'm glad you're back on the channel. I think you and I kind of started doing Palantir videos at the same time again.
Yeah, I know, it's funny, right?
I like posted a video, like you were on my comment space. I went to go look at your channel, and I'm like, oh, he just posted one an hour ago too. Something like that. And,
I was like, I just, you know, for me, I wanted to share my experience, and hopefully it just helps people who are struggling right now to deal with the losses, just to give them a little more perspective. And like, don't give up on your thesis. If you have a strong conviction and you have a thesis that you believe in, like, just, you know, I think I'm not an investment advisor. I don't want to, this is what I'm doing for myself, is like just going back and getting with the community really helps check yourself too. Cause a lot of the people in the community do stock, like the technical stock analysis. And that always helps me like kind of understand more about like how to counter things when people are banging on them about not being profitable, but like a huge portion of that is driven by stock-based compensation with the cash flow positive. I wouldn't know that, you know, like I don't go in and dig into stuff like that. So it's good to see. This community is great for that. You know, like I think it's really hard to not give up on a thesis when you're deep in the red, and this community is really helping. I think people remember, like, why was I in this thing? You know, what was the reason I invested in this? And has that changed at all? Has it changed? If anything, it's gotten stronger for me. I don't know about for you, but for me, if anything, that thesis is much stronger today than it was when I originally bought. So,
oh man, I like them between 20 and 25. I love them right now at 13, 14, dude. Like, and if it drops down to 10 because of macro economic pressures, like, I know what it is. It's macroeconomic. This is a good company, man. It has zero debt on its balance sheet. It has $2 billion cash on hand. I think like more than that now. With the fourth quarter coming in, they're growing at 40% growth rate. It'll probably be 42% this coming quarter, and they have great profit margins when you adjust for cash flow. So they have really good profit margins, and they're growing, dude. Like their commercial business is growing. Their commercial business is really young, man. Yeah, I know that you say, like, you know, they started 2016, 2017. But really, like, they've had no sales team till like 2020, you know. So they're not even out there marketing what they have just yet, and they're not even against it. It's just like they were really focused on developing and creating the product, and now they're starting to market their product. So we're just in very, very early stages, and folks don't get that. So what I'm really enthusiastic about is, like, here they have this 0 to 1 product that industries desperately need right now. And in a time of crisis, when there's like shortage in shipment, when there's, you know, bad distribution of PPE and all these different things, we're going through all these different crises, wars and rumors of wars, right? We're going through all these different things, and here's this company saying, hey, you need top-notch technology. We have what you need. Here it is. And it's like the timing is just perfect, man. And it's like, if people don't see that, and that's why I'm like doubling down on my YouTube videos now on Palantir, because it's like, all right, you guys really need to pay attention to this, because I think 5 years, 10 years down the line, we're gonna look back and say, like, oh man, why didn't I hold? Or oh man, why didn't I you know, look into this company? Because I just do not get this idea of like people saying that Palantir is a meme stock. I'm like, really? Like,
and Snowflake is the thing you should invest in, right? Like, Palantir is a meme stock, and the same people are trying to sell you Snowflake, you know?
Yeah. It's a crazy world out there. So I definitely appreciate those channels that are doing. I like this community, man. I like the Palantir community. They're funny.
You know, if you really break it down, like, think how many quality, smart people are in this community, and also, like, it should tell you something when, like, you've got this community, and a large part of them are software engineers, you know, that actually work in this space, that are investing in Palantir. So, like, that's a pretty unique, pretty awesome kind of setup. And I definitely think, like, people should appreciate that. Calling it a meme stock, like, really undervalues the people who are part of the community. You know, like, to me, I've been on. There's a Discord server that I go on. Some funny ass people posting funny ass memes on there, but in the like deeper discussion channels, you have some really great conversation going on. I think like a lot of these investors who criticize meme stocks, it's like, you're just late to the party, buddy. Like, this is the future of investment. It's not. You think this is going to like because people now are turned on to this whole idea, and you're starting to see the growth of investment communities. I don't see that trend slowing down. If you're going to be sitting there like calling meme stocks. What, because there's a bunch of high conviction smart people putting their own money into a fucking company like that's stupid, to devalue that. That's just like, that's people who have too much ego, in my opinion.
Yeah. All right, CodeStrap. So I think we're gonna go with the Palantrillion name. What do you think, dude? Should I create a separate channel, or should I just make this channel Palant? I'm torn about this. I gotta say, because like I saw people putting money into Snap when it dropped off 30%. Yeah. When I saw that, I was like, "Dang, I gotta make a video about this." And the video was like, "Guys, wait till like low 30s." And I got a lot of flack. But if just one person would have waited, I would have saved them 30% of pain, because it's right now it's currently trading at low 30s. And so there's times where like I want to make other content besides Palantir content, just because I'm really invested in the market. Palantir is not the only company I invest in. And so I have my thoughts and my opinions and my ideas and things like that. So I'm just kind of torn. So what are your thoughts, man? Should I make a separate channel, or just make this the Palantir?
I would just make this the Palantrillion.
Right. It started as a Palantir thing anyway.
Yeah. I mean, that's what I would do. And I love the name. I think the name's awesome. And let the hate begin.
Man. I'm going to be the most hated channel. Like, this guy's pumping that. You should
just make like video after video after video calling it a $1 trillion company. Just like give them the fodder to just come after you. But like, I think ultimately you're going to be proven right. Like, I want someone to tell me who they think is a $1 trillion company, like that is at this stage, right? Like they've just gone IPO over the last year. Tell me, or maybe the last 5 years, right? Maybe they're in the 5-year window. But like, you tell me who you think is a better bet for the next $1 trillion company than Palantir, because I don't see it. Like I don't see another company out there that I'm this excited about that has this big a TAM that could grow into so many things, and that what I'm really focused on is that developer value that can be created. Like I don't see another ecosystem that could create that kind of value, where developers could,
All right, operate. That's it. You convinced me. I'm officially Palantrillion.
Palantrillion.
There it is.
Love it, dude. Love it. All right, man. I got a jet, dude. I gotta get to work here. I got a whole list of chores. We're having some kids over today, so
I appreciate
all my work.
Awesome. Excuse me. Appreciate the conversation, man. Thank you so much. We'll catch up another time, dude.
Awesome. Thanks, JG. I'll talk to you, man.
Bye.
See ya.